Formula One is heading into its first triple header: Japan, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. Starting April 4th at Suzuka, this will be crunch time for the teams, and we will see some upgrades rolling out for our first triple header of the F1 season. We've got such a close fight between Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull, when they obviously all put it together. So one upgrade could be the difference maker between 4th to 1st right now for those top teams. Even the midfield, if they bring a big upgrade, it could possibly put them in the fight with these top teams and fight for bigger points on a race-to-race basis. We're going to be talking about when each team's next big upgrade comes out. We have information on McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Aston Martin, and Haas. The other teams, there isn't too much out for them, but we're going to cover what's confirmed and what we know should be coming. But right before I get into that, as always, thank you for the support on the channel. It's amazing and it truly makes my day reading your guys' comments, seeing the likes on the videos, and in general, you guys enjoying this. So if you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe. So much for the 2025 season to cover. Now we got Japan upcoming. So let's talk about this triple header. We're going to start with Haas and the upgrades they are bringing to Japan. Haas is now in big collaboration with Toyota, and there is possibilities of Toyota becoming that full team at some point within the coming years. They're very much in the midfield. They had quite the horrible Australia, which we now know why was so bad. The setup for the Haas is a bit weird, kind of like it is on the Ferrari, and the high-speed corners were destroying the team because of the bouncing. China requires a lot more downforce, which is what they bolted on for that weekend, which was why it was more successful, and we saw the setup window open up on that Haas. And the race pace is very competitive. While I don't believe them to be the strongest midfield team, they're very easily up there with Williams, Aston, and Racing Bulls, who are all very closely competitive. The team has hinted at a floor tweak coming for this weekend, and while they have downplayed the parts, at some point it was being reported that there are very big upgrades that could make a big difference. But now with more reports from what we've been seeing and what Ayu Komatsu has said, these are parts to help address the problems with the current VF25, and how they can extract more performance on a race-to-race basis, so when they do go to these high-speed circuits like Suzuka, they can actually set up the car properly without it bouncing and them losing too much pace and confidence with their two drivers, Ocon and Ali Behrman. The car needs to behave for them to actually extract some points, and it's so close, so these could prove crucial for the rest of the season. McLaren we have the least amount of information for on the top 4 teams, as they've been very secretive with their car. They've said there will be upgrades in the season. It's not like this is a full and finished MCL 39, but we can expect small parts coming to each of these GPs. They've already presented us with a new high downforce rear wing, which I do expect to see here in Suzuka, and we're probably going to see a much lower downforce wing there in Jeddah. Nothing has been confirmed as for big parts that we can see for the car. They just kind of bring a little bit of everything to each race. They did have some parts added to their rear, which might not seem like a lot, but play a big difference. That part has been messed around with through this regulation period plenty, and it seems like McLaren is extracting the most when it comes to how easy they can go into those deep corners on their brakes, and the cooling in the car is super efficient to any other team, which is what's putting them up top, and why their tire wear is superior to any other team. And while the car under Lando's hands was struggling a lot with understeer, Oscar Piastri made it work. And as Lando hopped onto the hards at the very end there, he said he could turn the front. So it seems like while the car is balanced, it's still very tricky to find that window where it's working very perfectly because of the amount of anti-dive they added onto suspension. Makes the car a bit tricky to handle, but it's clear to see that is the quickest car as of right now. The team in green, the expectations were low after testing, and now they've proven that they are, if not the top team, up there with Williams, Racing Bulls, and as I stated, Haas. They're all extremely close. You could argue for each of these teams that they're top in qualifying and race pace to actually extract the most points from that midfield position. As I said with Haas, they're very close, and one big upgrade can really change their trajectory for the rest of the season, and Fernando Alonso has talked a lot about this. Andy Cowell has even stated that if they don't get a podium in 2025, they would be very disappointed in their season, which is a good look for the team. Fernando has stated, and he said this last year as well, that it's going to be a steady stream of upgrades for Aston Martin throughout the season, where they're going to bring little parts here and there to understand the car as best as possible and tweak what needs to be done to get the most out of it. Right now their race pace is pretty strong. In qualifying they struggle with tire warm-up, which I guess is a pretty good issue to have considering how bad 24 was when they were shredding through those tires like butter. And really where they can unlock some serious downforce and where we can expect Aston to gain a lot of time will not be in the triple header. It's going to be Imola, more than likely, unless they progress these upgrades a lot faster than that's being said. Imola is the big date for the team in green, where if everything goes correctly, they expect to be fighting with the top 4. And no, Adrian Newey will not be touching these upgrades that are coming. They've already been in the pipeline for a while. Could he be adjusting something? Very possibly, but I think we might see an impact more on the setup side, and 2026 will be the first Adrian Newey car. I don't expect upgrades in 2025 from the team in green, and specifically that from Adrian Newey. Mercedes is probably the team with the most balanced car out of the top 4. Toto Wolff has now gone on record saying they are clearly the second fastest car, which I think is debatable. It seems like Ferrari has the second fastest, only when they put it in the right setup window. But Mercedes will have some upgrades coming, even some circuit-specific stuff for Bahrain and also possibly Miami. The real weaknesses of the W16, while they are very few, is the low-speed corners and their lack of downforce, specifically in the rear. James Allison has also talked about it, just like Fernando Alonso, that each GP will see something new added to the Mercedes car, and whether that's for our eyes to see or just internal parts, we'll have to wait to see that on the Thursday of each GP weekend. The car looks to be in a much better place than any of its previous versions, and with one decent upgrade, the W16 could be fighting for wins, and George Russell has been one of the only drivers on the grid to stay in the top 5 for each session, and the only other driver being Max Verstappen. So that tells you the level of where Mercedes is at, but also their drivers. Miami is where they brought a big upgrade last year. I expect the same for this year, but Bahrain we could see some few tweaks, which has been confirmed by the team. Red Bull is clearly the team that needs the most work done to its RB21. A lot of drama going on there with Yuki Tsunoda hopping in the car and really welcoming the pressure, which is quite nice to see. It's going to be a lot of pressure. It'll be really interesting to see, can he adjust to it quicker than others? Suzuka is obviously a track he's very familiar with, and the Red Bull car has proved to be pretty strong in the high speed stuff. Now this was in 2024, 2023, and 2022 where they were most dominant in high speed, but in China they were actually lacking in that sector, but that had a lot to do with setup, and I do expect them to be still pretty strong here in Japan. There are no upgrades for Japan, and Helmut Marko has stated that the team should struggle within these 3 races. After that, in Imola should be the big upgrade package. Now if you look on Twitter, Dr. Obbs, he has some inside sources for Red Bull, and he has stated that the big package should come in Imola, unless it's progressed to possibly Jeddah, because that was the initial talk, that it should be 5 races time, that is Jeddah. But with Helmut recently coming out and saying these 3 races should be a struggle, I do expect it to be a delayed just a slight bit, and why we'll be seeing this package probably for the European leg of GPs. Max can probably still carry this car to possibly a podium, but it's the race pace they're lacking. That rear stability is awful, and mid-corner understeer is still plaguing that car from the middle of 24 to all the way to now. It's definitely not panic mode for the team. They're really relying on Spain being a game changer for them. But if they're going to be in the Drivers' Championship hunt with Max, they gotta adjust this car and get it in a sweet spot way sooner than later. Last team that we know has a confirmed part for the Bahrain GP is Ferrari. Now obviously, if you are a Ferrari fan, it's been a rough start to 2025, whether you're a Charles fan or Lewis or both. There will be a new floor that debuts in Bahrain and possibly talk of the diffuser being adjusted as well. Lois Serra has talked about this floor being designed to fix the SF25's rear stiffness issues, which is part of the reason this Ferrari car has been so up and down like in Australia, but then we saw Lewis extract the most out of it in the sprint race. The stiffer compounds in Suzuka may actually help with the relative stiffness of the rear axle, and we could see good performance here with the car because they are saying it's very quick. It's just a lack of understanding to actually find this performance, which does require some time. When everything is put together, Ferrari to me looks like the second fastest car, and in the hands of Charles Leclerc specifically in China, if it wasn't for the front wing damage and being able to pass cars a little bit quicker, it was possible they could have fought for a victory. Now that is a big statement to make, but clean air is king on all of these tracks, and the Ferrari is relatively quick. They have good race pace. Their qualifying pace is slower than that of the McLaren. Leclerc and Lewis have both talked about it, but tire wear is strong, And if they can fix these stiffness issues in the rear, which isn't a season ender, then I can see them fighting for victories, and there is possibly still a title run to be made. It's really only race 2. We have this triple header, so much to be expected, and I'm definitely ready for it. I usually make these videos for each individual GP weekend, but why not just talk about it as a whole, as we do have a lot of information throughout the weekend on these top 4 teams and a couple of the others. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the comments below. Do you believe this will make an impact on our triple header? And could we see a different winner rather than the team in orange, at least in the big GPs, not just sprints? Please leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.